Hello, Trailblazers. Welcome to the Trailblazers Palette Podcast. Today, I'm really happy to be sharing this conversation with Rachel McDaniel, the artist behind RMarie Artistry. Rachel's an artist based in California, and I first came across her work on Instagram. These beautifully soft, vintage-inspired landscapes that felt instantly familiar, like something you'd want to live beside. But as I kept following along, it was her presence that really stayed with me. Her humour, her honesty, and the way she shares this quiet, creative life with such care. In our chat, we talk about how she found her way back to art after years in corporate work, motherhood, and deep personal loss, and how painting became a way to steady herself through it all. What started as hand lettering and creative play eventually turned into a growing business through commissions, print sales, and the surprising power of simply sharing her story. It's a conversation about creativity, identity, healing, and what it means to build something meaningful from the messiness of life. I hope it brings something to you wherever you're listening from. Rachel, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm just so honored and flattered that you even want to speak with me and I get to talk about my art and everything. I just appreciate you reaching out. So thank you.
I'm excited to have you here, Rachel. And I guess starting out, it's a big question, I know, like how did you get to where you are and why do you create the art that you do?
Yeah, it is a big question. How far back do we want to go? I could go back to childhood. I just have always been into art and creating and always loved drawing and painting. And I remember it's my sixth grade class. There was like a competition to create a poster outside of the school, I think, that the teacher entered us into. And it was like a health and wellness, like, let's promote kids to be healthy. And so I remember drawing, fruits and vegetables and people exercising and things. And mine won. And it got our class like $50 for our classroom, which was so cool. So it was kind of the first time that I was like, whoa, I'm good at this outside of mom and dad being like, oh, you're such a good artist. And that was cool. And then, yeah, she was like, well, you got $50 for the classroom. What do you want to use it for? And I thought that was so awesome. And I decided I wanted to have a boom box for the class and play music in the classroom. And so, yeah, it's kind of just been in me and I kind of kept going with it. And middle school, high school, I took all the art electives and enjoyed those so much. It was kind of a break from, just regular school and math and history and all that stuff that we artists maybe don't love as much. I was always a good student in those subjects, but art was like the fun part where I could just express myself and not worry so much about the grade because I was a perfectionist with my grades and people pleaser and all of that, wanted to make my parents proud. So, yeah, those art classes were just a really great way where I could just be myself and not worry so much about everyone else's judgment, I guess. And then funnily enough, the same thing kind of happened in high school. My teacher had collected a couple of the students' work and said, there's a competition at the fairgrounds and I'm going to submit some of your guys' art. And she submitted mine and I won first place for that. So it was like, oh my gosh, okay. It was the universe, telling me kind of you're on the right path and this is where you're meant to go. And so that was really cool too. So when it came to college and figuring out what I wanted to do was kind of a no-brainer. It was like, okay, I guess I'm going to major in art. Like, why would you major in anything else? Like, you get to do something fun that is enjoyable and you're painting and drawing instead of taking tests and reading, although that's involved as well. But so that was the path I chose. And my parents, luckily, were super supportive. They're both musicians. And so growing up, I kind of had that example of you don't have to follow that path that everyone lays out for you, where you get a job and you work for the man and it was kind of like that was an open door for me to see that it's possible to do something with your life and make a living doing something that you're passionate about. And so, when I said I wanted to major in art, it was not like, well, what are you going to do with that degree? And how are you going to make a living? And what job is going to support that? It was just like, oh, awesome, great, do your thing. And I'm so thankful for that because yeah, I didn't have a plan. I was just kind of like, I know I love to create and the plan will unfold and I'll find my way. So I loved college art classes. Although I will say, coming from that elementary high school experience where you're kind of big fish in a little pond, where it's like if you excel in art and those things, you get that recognition and you get that pride of like, oh wow, I'm really good at this. And then going to college, you're kind of thrown into the ocean and it's like everyone's good at this. And everyone's coming here because they love this and they're good at it and they're talented. And so you kind of have that humbling moment of, oh, like, am I good enough for this? Do I belong here? But I mean, I had great schooling and I did grow in confidence through those like humbling moments. And I don't know if you've had experience with wall crits where you're hanging all your work up on the wall and every single person in the class is just tearing it down for all the
I haven't
things.
experienced that actually. It sounds
Oh,
terrifying.
it is absolutely terrifying and the
I
most
can
uncomfortable
imagine.
thing, especially if you're an introvert like I am. And,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it forces you out of your comfort zone and to look at your own work and
Mm.
to improve on things and, take what you understand and agree with and apply it to whatever you're working on next. And then the things that kind of just rub you the wrong way, you let go of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna say, how did you find that experience? Like how did you work your way through it and not internalize the criticism, I guess?
it was hard.
Yeah.
Would be very hard on myself. Like I said, thinking, oh, going the art route through college is so fun. And, you have this idea of it's going to be kind of like the easy path. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you have these studio classes where you're there 3 hours instead of the normal hour or whatever it is. And, you have an art project due and you have to put in the time. And whether that's 5, 6, 7, 8 hours on a project, as opposed to, I mean, you might study for that long on a test as well, but it's just a different, I think people have this idea that it's kind of a easy streak and it's not
Mm.
really. I mean, it's really a hard working major. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I guess I didn't know how to handle it at first. And you kind of, with anything else, gain experience of having gone through those critiques and let it either slide off your back or, take that criticism and implement it with whatever you're working on next. And I do feel like jumping forward quite a bit, it almost also helps you in the world of social media to like know that everyone's going to have an opinion and everyone may or may not gravitate towards your work, but that's okay. You'll find your place. And I think naturally your progression happens and you evolve as an artist. So, college, graduated with my art degree. And then it was like, okay, now what? But luckily, I found a job working as a product developer for a large action sports company. And it was like just enough of that little creative aspect where, I'm working with designers, doing clothing lines and manufacturers. And I remember walking in the first day and there were clothing racks and fabric samples. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I get to be like amongst the artists and things. And, so it was awesome at first, and I thought it would scratch that creative itch just enough, but I soon realized that wasn't the case.
It's a different
um,
world, isn't it, fashion?
it's a
Yeah.
different world, and it was a corporate world.
Yes.
It
Very
was
much.
not. It was 8 to 5. It was sitting in a desk in a cubicle all day long, and although I did have awesome opportunities, I got to travel and go to China and other countries, which was amazing, but I soon realized this corporate world isn't for me. I was craving that creative outlet, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't necessarily have the time at that point. I was working full time and soon after got married, had my first child. And then my goal was always to be a stay at home mom. I wanted to be able to be home, care for my kids. That was what my mom did. And that just didn't seem to be in the cards for me until my husband got a job a few hours away from where we lived. And at that point, I kind of had to let go of my job in order to move our family, which I was okay with because that was what I wanted. But it was also a real challenge. I was in a new place, didn't know anybody, was just kind of in the throes of motherhood. not really knowing what my next step was. So I was just sitting in it. And, every day is the same. And it's just like, it can be very lonely and isolating. And that was how I felt when we moved. So at this point, art and creating was really on the back burner. I was just kind of trying to get through the day every
You do,
day.
don't you?
Yeah,
It's like it with
surviving.
kids.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
survival mode. As much as I loved it and I was so thankful to do it and be home, it is exhausting, and it's
Yeah.
just a whole other level of exhaustion and losing yourself and your identity and just kind of all of the things that made me me prior to being a mom kind of drifted and slipped away. And I think that's kind of tale as old as time, like as moms, we just give everything to our kids, and it's hard to put ourselves first and find a way to nurture the things that we need in order to feel ourselves. But although I was lonely, I did make a friend soon after we moved, and it was another mom who had a daughter about the same age as my son. So we became very close, and she was a great is and is still is a great friend, and her daughter and my son were very close, became very good friends. 6 years after I met her daughter was diagnosed with brain cancer. And that was just something that shattered my world completely. She passed a little less than a year later. And this was when I just felt like my world was turned upside down. My belief systems, everything I thought I knew about the world had just shifted. And I didn't know what was real and what was true when it came to faith or, the way things work in the world. This is when I experienced like real anxiety for the first time in my life. At this point, I'd had another child, and, being a mom, you already worry about your kids all the time. And this just like accelerated it to a level I had never experienced. That kind of push that I was feeling before, that I needed to find myself and create and, get back into that. It was like I was being fully pushed into that at that point. I had to figure something out to feed that need and fit within me to ground myself in who I was and what I needed to do with my life after being in these throes of motherhood and now this crazy experience that I've had. So shortly after that, I started creating again. It started with, actually, I was on Instagram and started following a bunch of hand letterers and calligraphers. And that just, I became obsessed with it and I loved it so much. And so I bought a bunch of brush pens and I started doing hand lettering and calligraphy. And I instantly realized that just the act of creating, it relieved that anxiety almost instantaneously. Like I would get lost in what I was doing. I would feel myself just lifting and feeling better. And it was like, oh, wow, there's something here that is reconnecting with my old self and what like my soul desires. So I started posting my art. I started posting my hand lettering. I would enter little like hand lettering competitions from other creators on Instagram. And it's kind of funny. I didn't think about this as like an ongoing theme, but like again, I would win it and they would post my things. And it was like, oh my gosh, I still kind of have this within me. It lives inside of me and it's coming out again. And it's not the last, whatever, 10 years, 15 years prior to that were not a waste of my creativity and my skills and my talents. And so that was really reassuring. It was like, okay, I not only is this helping with my mental health and pulling me out of this pit of just anxiety and despair, but it's kind of helping me find myself again and reaffirming that I have something to offer and have worth and identity outside of motherhood, which was really cool. So from there, I started getting random commissions for different lettering jobs, which was really cool. It was like, okay, I'm getting busy and I'm making some money, which was awesome. And then it's kind of evolved from just lettering to having other elements within the art, like florals, and I was doing watercolors and different things. But I didn't really have a set direction of what I wanted to do with art as far as my style and that sort of thing. I was still kind of figuring that out. And then around the same time, I had a friend who was starting an interior design business. She came to me for a few commissions and was like, I have some clients, and would you be interested in doing art for them? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so that was what really shifted my work to more landscapes, things that were kind of vintage inspired looking. She does a lot of like a coastal style. We're here in Southern California. And so that's kind of the vibe. And so that was what really gave me the opportunity to hone my skills and kind of move away from the calligraphy and that stuff and move into more of a fine art, landscape art, that sort of thing. And so those commissions kept coming in, and it was like, this is a great marriage, like she was getting more and more jobs and then I was getting more and more jobs. And so it was a really beautiful thing. And I just kind of evolved from there. So that I started posting on the calligraphy stuff probably about 7 years ago, but I was very inconsistent. It was just kind of like posting as I wanted. And this was back when Instagram was still just photos and it wasn't, about the numbers
The good
game
old
as
days of
much. Yeah,
Instagram.
exactly. Exactly. So it was only maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I started doing commissions for her. And then a year ago that I started taking Instagram a little more seriously and trying to grow on there and adapting to the whole reels and that sort of thing. So it's been a
Which you do
real,
so well.
oh, thank you. As much as it's, social media is such a double-edged sword, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to navigate and it's hard to feel like you're doing it right. And there's so much negativity as far as the competition aspect and all of that. But to me, I mean, it really was another creative outlet and it was really a fun thing to take on. So I considered it another artistic challenge, I guess you could say. So that was really fun. So, anyways, yeah, that's kind of how my artistic journey began and has brought us up until this point. And now I'm just loving creating. And my kids are a little older, and I have that window, while they're at school to paint. My style has evolved, and I've grown more confident. But it takes time. There was a long time that I just doubted myself and wasn't sure if what I was doing was right or if I was on the right path. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
like coming back to that, I guess, mindset that you would have experienced, I guess, with like the critiques back in college. And
Yeah.
even I know me coming across you on Instagram, and I love following you on Instagram because you do make me smile and you do make me
Oh,
laugh, and
thank you.
you show that side of being an artist that is kind of difficult but funny too.
Mhm.
And I really like that. It's
Thank you.
I think that your spirit comes through in that, and it's fairly rare to see, and it's
Mm.
nice to see you doing well with that. But yeah, like I guess, through those tough times and even now, do you have rituals or things that bring you back to being grounded, or do you just find art in itself is that for you?
Yeah, art in itself is that for me, absolutely. But, hand in hand with that, again, going back to that time when I was dealing with anxiety and not knowing quite how to handle it, I found that moving my body was a big part of it as well. So just a lot of times going on walks if I need to clear my head or if I'm not in the mood to paint or I'm not feeling motivated, I've found that if I can just move my body a little bit, go for a walk, get outside, get some fresh air, that really helps me. I'm really inspired by nature. I'm really inspired by beauty that we can find outdoors in all different landscapes. Of course, I'm partial to ocean and beaches and those settings. But I don't live right by the beach. I'm about 20-ish, 30 minutes from the beach. So when I go on my walks, it's more of a, your normal suburban, but I
Yeah.
love it. The oak trees and the Malibu hills and mountains in the distance. And so that really grounds me for sure. Creating grounds me, but I think also, like you said, the humor part of it, you can't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home that, like I said, it was my dad's a musician, my mom's a singer, and they both were laughing all the time and cracking jokes. And when first met my husband, I was looking for a partner. That was the main thing that I was looking for, was someone that could make me laugh. And
Mm.
he does, and he did then, and he continues to now. And I just feel like that is such an essential part of just being a human being and enjoying life, and not feeling the pressure all the time, because there's so much pressure, whether it's in motherhood, in whatever your career is, and in life in general. I mean, we have a slab leak right now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's just always something.
Yeah.
But if you can make light of it, and you can, find the humor, it doesn't feel so daunting. So I think that's where, with my reels and things, I like to make it lighthearted. I'm a huge empath. I feel everything, and I am a Cancer, and I am emotional, and the world can feel very heavy sometimes.
Mm.
We sometimes feel it's like we're just surrounded by tragedy. That is true in a lot of aspects, but you have to, focus on the positive, find things that bring you joy, find things that bring you laughter. And so that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? We can get lost in, I think or I find for myself, I get lost in the negativity a lot.
Yes.
And that I've found that struggle personally with social media. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
yet found my balance with it. And
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even how to show that humor side but still be seen as professional, I guess, as
Right.
well. Like, how much of myself do I show, how much do I not show, and how do you find that balance for you?
I think what I had to realize pretty early on was that, okay, if I'm going to do this social media thing, and I'm going to put myself out there, because for the first, 5 years, I guess, that I had that Instagram, I never showed my face. It was just my
Mm-hmm.
art. It was stills of my art. It was videos of my art. And I thought, there's no way I can show my face. Gosh, there's no way. I still don't really talk to the camera. It's like I
Yeah.
will be on camera, but no, it was a really hard to decide, okay, how do I want this to play out? I think what I decided early on was that if I'm going to do social media, it's going to be, first of all, just for me. I'm going to do it because I want to try something new. I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to have another form of creating, and I want to get my art out there. I want to do things that bring me joy, that I find fun or inspirational. So I think if you focus on your social media being for you and not for anyone else, I mean, yes, we're all trying to get ourselves out there and be seen and all of that, but you can't focus on other people and do the whole comparison game and the numbers game and all of that. So, yeah, that's kind of been my mindset. I want to try to find a balance, I think, in inspiration, humor, artistic talent, and motherhood. Those are kind of the pillars that I work with. I have not really shown my kids, so that's kind of one boundary. I think
Yeah.
I maybe have in the past, just quick pictures and things, but that's kind of where I draw the line. I'm not getting on every day and talking about what's going on in my personal life. I try to keep it professional as far as just what's going on in my artistic life and world. But it's a balance that I'm still struggling to find, because you see, like you say, you can't compare, but you see other people getting on there and showing all
Yeah,
their
yeah.
life and being
And
so
that's
open.
probably, yeah, very true. That's probably what I was meaning to. Yeah, because that's what I find. I'm like, oh, that person's like sharing everything, like what they have for dinner and the whole day,
Right.
and someone else shows hardly anything. It's just their work, it's,
Yeah.
and I guess that
And
does,
yeah, and there are successful people in
yeah,
both, right? So it's
exactly.
kind of like that's where you have to go inward and decide, well, who am I and what's authentic
Mm,
to me? Because I think if you try and put yourself, I mean, it's one thing to step out of your comfort zone, but it's another thing to do something that's inauthentic,
yeah.
So and I think that people know the difference, and they know
Mhm.
when it's an authentic thing and when it's not. And so it's all part of the evolution, and then you're going to put things out there that work, and then you're going to put things out there that don't work, and you try and find that formula. But it's an ongoing thing for me. I'm still learning and trying to figure out how to do best.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? I really like that view. And you're right. I know some artists who don't have social media at all, and they've made that work for them because it's just a no-go zone that are for their mental health or whatever, and others
Yeah.
that thrive with it. So it's
Hmm.
nice that we get to choose.
Yeah. And, also as a smaller creator, there's also kind of some freedom in that because it's like
Yes.
you can put yourself out there,
You
you can
can
do
post something
something.
and it's okay.
Yeah, you can do something completely cringe. And if it goes viral, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's cringe, but that's cool. It went viral. And if it doesn't, it's like, well, no one saw it. So who cares?
It's okay if it only got one like,
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, to that point, though, I mean, smaller creators are to be taken just as seriously. A lot of my
Absolutely.
work, yeah, a lot of my work that I've got, especially in the beginning, was just friends and family who, if I
Mm.
wasn't posting, they're not friends and family that I see every day. So they wouldn't have known what I was doing and what I was putting out there and what they could request. And, we wouldn't have had those kinds of collaborations. So I think it's just putting yourself out there, letting go of fear, not letting your decisions be controlled by fear. And you'll be surprised at the opportunities that come your way by just pushing that fear aside.
Yeah,
Fear of being
being
seen.
that little bit brave, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, it was hard for me at first just to show my face, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like when you rip that band-aid off, it's kind of
Mm,
not as big a deal after a little bit.
yes. And I think that being brave, it looks different for every person too. So I
Hmm.
think, for some people it can be a big thing, and for someone else it might be a really small thing, but to each one it's still that big step,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that if you just act on your highest passion and your high, you choose between two things, you choose the thing that brings you the most excitement, and your path will kind of naturally find its way, and you learn what gets you excited and what doesn't, and the things that don't get you excited, don't do them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind
It's
of,
that simple, really.
it's that simple, really, but it
Yeah.
isn't simple because in the beginning, it's
Yes.
like you want to just do everything that comes
I
your
know.
way because it's an
Shiny object.
opportunity.
Object.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it can be hard to distinguish, like, am I really excited about doing this, or am I just excited that I'm going to get paid? you
Yeah,
know?
true, true. Yeah.
So there's that discernment that comes with experience as well.
So tell me a bit more, Rachel, about your studio practice. How do you like to paint? Like I imagine you, like you said, you've got your hours that your kids are at school, so you're
Hmm.
balancing, family life with creating.
Yeah.
What's your preferred medium, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So I mostly now work with acrylics. I love it because I feel like it's just so forgivable. You can,
Yeah.
easily paint over mistakes and it's almost like starting over. And so I love that aspect of it. I have my little corner of my house that's my makeshift studio, and that's just fine for now. And I do paint mostly while the kids are at school, and you kind of have this window of watching the clock and making sure, of course, right when you're in a groove and in the flow, that you
Yeah.
have to run out the door. Yeah, I do mostly commissions now. So whether it's through the interior designer that I work with, or just other people who reach out, that's kind of been my process. And so in that sense, it's a lot of collaboration, and it's a lot of back and forth of what is it that you're inspired by, what is it that you're going for as far as vibe and that sort of thing. And in the beginning, when I started taking commissions, it was a lot more involved and back and forth. And I think, I was just not so confident. And I was wanting to make sure the client was happy. So there was a lot of, well, do you want this medium or do you want that medium? And they don't know, so I had to learn very quickly that I had to be the expert here, and I had to kind of guide the conversation. And, in the beginning, I would send pictures halfway through and then three-quarters of the way through. And then, do you like it? Do you want to change anything? And I quickly learned that that didn't need to happen. I could be confident in what I was doing. We could have a plan prior to going into it. There didn't have to be so much of the decision making on the client, and just muddying the waters when you're going back and forth so much. So I've learned along the way to be confident in my skill set, be confident in my vision when a client has an idea, and know that I can execute it and deliver. And very rarely are there any changes that need to be made. And now with my interior designer client, I mean, we've worked together for so long that she just has full trust in me and is just like, this is what I want, go do however you want to do it, take your creative license and create it however you like. And so that's really nice. It's just, this freedom to create, have guidelines, but also do my own thing and be free to execute it how I like. And she has full trust and I have full trust. And so it's a really good partnership in that sense. So I haven't as much been doing my own pieces, which I'm kind of bummed about. But, there's only so much time in the day. So for right now, it's these commissions, which are awesome. But I do want to start delving into kind of my own work and still try to hone my style and figure out, I don't know, if I could just do anything I wanted, then what would it be? And so there's a little bit of, it's a little scary, but it's also some freedom there, Actually, I just had a commission that was for a really large piece. It was like a 3 foot by 5 foot. And so I bought the canvas and I was ready to go, and then it fell through. And I thought, well, okay, I'll take the canvas back. But then I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to do my own thing. And, it'll take me, maybe push me into that realm, and I'll have an opportunity to create something I want to create and go from there. So,
and
yeah.
have you started on that
No,
one yet, or is
no.
that still waiting? So
That's still waiting.
That's exciting though.
Yeah, but that's what I told myself. It's like, I don't care how long it sits in the garage. Like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hold myself to it, and continue to push myself, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
that's nice. I love hearing different artists and their journeys with, balancing that commission work with their own work. And it's always really interesting to hear. So yeah, I love hearing that about you and how you've actually found your groove with commissions. That's quite inspiring.
Well, yeah, it's kind of surprising to me
Yeah.
as well, because like I said, it was a bit of a struggle to find my confidence. And so the fact that this is the path I've been led down is kind of weird, but I think the universe does that sometimes and just kind of is like, no, you got this, you can do this, And so that was the path that I was led down, and it's turned out to be a good fit. So
I find it interesting because I've personally struggled with it, but
mm-hmm.
I think maybe like what you're saying there, it's a case of the more you do and you find your own feet with it, that would naturally happen, I assume.
Yes, I think, finding your footing, knowing your boundaries. And I think
Like
also,
streamlining that process.
yeah, streamlining the
Yeah.
process. Now, there's always going to be clients
Mm.
or situations that are a little more difficult, and there will be that back and forth, and there will be changes maybe. Luckily, knock on wood, I haven't had any experiences that have been too traumatizing where I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore, So it's been an okay fit for me.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Is there
Mhm.
like a spiritual side to your art that you like to explore as well?
Yeah. I think, I talked about my spirituality, my faith really being challenged with different things earlier on. And so my
Mm.
view of that whole thing has just evolved and grown, and where it was maybe a much more narrow view through the eyes of religion and church and that sort of thing, has kind of broadened and become more about spirituality and just connection with fellow human beings and spirit as well. And so that, I think, goes hand in hand with the whole nature aspect. I think nature is a part of spirit and a part of God, and when you feel that within you, it comes through in your art, whether it's singing, whether it's painting. So I find myself, and I'm sure this has happened to you too, but when you get in a groove and almost like a trance state when you're painting, and it just is flowing. And sometimes I'll finish a piece and step back and just be like, whoa, where did that come from? That wasn't me that did that. It's almost like you're like a channel for
Yeah.
something bigger, something that is working through you. And so those are like small little moments of whether you want to call it God or the universe or spirituality coming through you. And that has felt very real to me in those moments. And so, yeah, I think that when we create, if it's a passion, it's absolutely a form of connection with spirit, connection with God, and connection with your soul and your higher self within you, and what really makes you who you are. And so I mean, of course, this can sound woo woo to some people, but I think that there's always that element that's like you can't fully explain. Yes, you can have talent. Yes, you can practice, and that is absolutely going to improve your skill set and your talent. But sometimes there's just like an unspoken, can't quite put your finger on it. Like, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Do you ever experience that? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I do often. And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
sometimes I can't talk about that, of course, with every artist. I don't fully, I feel drawn to something. Like I think that I'm such a feeling person that it's
Yes.
like there's certain colors or certain imagery that I know I want to use. And it's not really until later that I might go to kind of put together the story of that artwork or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be like, oh, what does that color mean? Or what does that imagery mean? And it kind of blows me away sometimes, the deeper
Yeah.
meaning behind a flower or a color or something like that. And I mean, I know
Mm-hmm.
it could just be me going piecing everything together and finding that,
Exactly.
but sometimes it's so, I guess, pertinent to that moment or what maybe is going on in my life. And I've had other people who have bought paintings feel that too, even if I haven't like described it yet. I might have only shown it, and then somebody else has bought it and they're like, oh, this is why. And I've had like tears sometimes with some of those stories,
Oh, that's
but I'm
amazing.
just like, how can art do this?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's quite powerful.
absolutely. And going back to the whole commission thing, the thing that I think is really cool about doing commissions is that most of the time there is a meaning behind it like that. The person that comes to you and wants this special piece of art, it's usually coming from a personal place or experience. And I've done trees that are very meaningful, and they're usually these pieces are gifts to a loved one. And so I've done an oak tree which a husband wanted commissioned for his wife, this beautiful oak tree that's out front of their home. And so when that person does receive these thoughtful gifts, yeah, there's a connection and there's an emotional tie to it. And so the idea that I can bring that to somebody is just so touching and so cool. And a lot of my pieces are like that. And whether it's, pet portraits that can be so meaningful, or back even when I was doing lettering, I would do meaningful sayings or family trees with all the children's names and that sort of thing. So that is one thing I will say that is extremely rewarding in doing
Yeah.
commissions, is that there is a deep personal connection to these people. And that's why it was intimidating at first, because it's meaningful to them, and so you want to get it right. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it would be really intimidating, but that is where I had to lean into my skills and trust my talents and know that I could bring their vision to life. And so that has been a big part of my journey. And I love that part of it. That part of it is so cool. And then I have people, same kind of thing, coming to me and just being like, this is so meaningful, or I gave this to my mother and my grandmother, and this, it's up in the wall in their house, and they just love it so much. And so I still to this day, it's hard for me to fathom the idea that people have my art on their walls.
I know.
And it like makes me like kind of cringe inside. Like, are you sure? You don't have to. Like, it's okay. But no, it's validating, and it's really cool to hear those stories.
Yeah, yeah, I love
Mhm.
that. And I love that
Yeah.
you said that, because I've had those exact same thoughts. Because
Yeah.
like years later, I'll have someone say to me, oh, I've still got, your painting, I don't know, beside somewhere, and I'll walk into that room, and every time I see it, it makes me feel this certain way, and I think of you, and I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. You think of me every day, or,
Yeah.
that, because you kind of, once it's sold, not completely forget about it, but, you're
Well, it's
onto
out of
other
sight.
things and you're into life. And yeah, so that's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, no, I think this is why art in any form, I just am so passionate about it being a part of, schools and kids.
Mhm.
And it's such an important way to express yourself, an important way to connect, an important
Mhm.
way to share your point of view, whether it's political, religious, or just fun and whatever. Like, it is a means of communication, and it speaks to people in a way that speaking verbally or writing doesn't always do. There's songs that you hear that you just immediately have tears in your eyes.
Yeah.
And it's something in that medium that touches your heart on whatever level. And it's hard to replicate in,
Yeah.
other ways.
It's visceral, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
emotive, and yeah, I think I love that about it the most. That
Yeah.
it's that we
Hmm.
connect on this in this way and in this place that words can't always describe.
Exactly. Hmm.
Mm. I wanted to go back to, because I know when you were saying about when you did art at school, like that was like the fun part, and
Hmm.
I found that too. I really identified with that. I love how you took your art then, and it was something that you took seriously, and you followed that as a career. I have to say that I struggle with that maybe still, like taking myself seriously as an artist, and
Hmm.
I know other people I've chatted to do too, in that sense of I've seen it, always seen it as this fun, playful thing. And is it okay that, I have this career out of something that I find fun? Like, how did you, I guess, how do you still keep the fun in it for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just the way I was
Mm,
raised, it wasn't outside of the realm. Like I said, I
mm,
think
mm.
it's funny. My father is one of seven, and the all of his siblings were in the corporate world. And he was kind of the black sheep that was this piano player that touring the country and playing in different churches, and just decided to go on this totally different, untraditional path. And I think for them it was really hard to wrap their minds around, well, how can you make a living doing this, and that's not a real job. And it's just, there's this way that we're programmed to think that there's a way you make a living, and then there's hobbies. And I
Yes.
think that that mold was broken in my home. It was like,
So
no,
that's
you
awesome. I
can,
love that.
yeah, you can have both, and you can thrive. And I think it is so far outside of the norm that people don't even think of it as an option. And
Yeah.
so for me, that was never the case. And even in starting this, trying to make it more of a career choice, it was like, well, sure, why not? Like, I can do that. Like, it's almost like a different mindset, a different way of thinking, and a different way of seeing the world. It's like you have to let go of the idea of thriving in capitalism by working for the man. And now let's be clear, I'm not making a full-time living right now doing this. Luckily, I'm very privileged to be able to take it as it comes, and not
Mm.
have the pressure of having it be a full-time income. However, I mean, I don't think that that's impossible, and I think that there shouldn't be any guilt or shame in taking something that's your passion and turning it into a career. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I think that is the kind of secret recipe to
Yeah.
success, is, I don't know, the way that you know you're on the right path. So yeah, I do struggle with it from time to time, but I struggle more with setting an example to my kids of doing something career wise where I'm miserable. And so I feel like this path, I think it's really cool for them to see me doing something I love and turning that into an income, and that that's a possibility for them too. And I hope that that inspires them to maybe not have this traditional path. It may be the safest path, it may be the path that everyone else does, but that's not necessarily the best path for everybody. And when it comes to college and that sort of thing, when I was a kid, it was like, you go to college, you get a job, you get married. And like, I just don't know if that's the way it is anymore. College has changed so much that I don't know if that's the path for every kid. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, no,
it's
yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're right in saying that, I guess there's so many different options now,
yeah,
and
exactly.
ways to where you want to go, and that it's okay that path changes, or that's what I've
Hmm.
found for myself and even my kids. But yeah, it's it's definitely a journey. I love that you're doing that and that you're showing your kids that side, because I hope to do that too, you know, that that creative feel that is possible if they want that.
Yeah, we're so unique as individuals. It's really hard to try and make this one size fits all for everybody. When it comes to my kids, they neither of them are sports kids. My son, we tried for years, we're like, get him on every team. Everyone else's kids are doing sports, put him on a team. And we did, and he didn't care. He didn't like it. He didn't, it
Mm,
wasn't his thing. And he's an engineer in at heart, and he's a
yeah.
brainy
But
like
that's awesome that
robotics.
you're listening to him though, and yeah,
Yeah.
that you're nurturing, yeah, that
Yeah, so
his
we're like
passions.
yeah, we're like, "Okay, we're done with the sports thing, like, let's find you a robotics team," and with my daughter, her thing is dance, and so I'm personally happy that I'm not going to sports games on the weekends, and that happens to be my path. I would do it if that was what they
Um,
wanted, but I'm like,
yeah.
"Yay, I have a brainy and an artsy kid," so I'm going to dance competitions and robotics competitions,
Yeah. That's very
but
cool.
yeah, it's just everybody has a different path and a different passion, and it's like part of the journey. It unfolds as you live life and you see where you're pulled and what lights your heart up.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really like that. Going forward, Rachel, like, do you
Yeah.
have plans for your future, or how, I guess, how do you see things evolving?
Whew, I don't know. That's really hard. I mean, I have an idea of what I want and I have goals, I guess, but it's really hard to know where life is going to take me. Right now,
Mm.
I'm happy, doing what I'm doing, but I do want bigger things. I want more opportunities. I want to show my kids that you can make a living doing what you're passionate about. I would love to have more opportunities to collaborate with other creators. I recently opened a print shop, so I would love to kind of get the wheels turning a little more on making art affordable for people that are looking for things that aren't in big box stores and aren't, the same what is that cow with the long hair that's on
Yeah,
everybody's wall?
I know.
like
Yes,
let's
I've seen that for years
seen it
too.
everywhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
So they're very cute and I like that, but like there are other artists out there that can create things that are, not
yes,
in every store, and but commissioned art is expensive. Like that's
yes,
just the
yes.
truth of it. And so I think it's kind of been a new mission to bring those pieces to a broader audience at a more affordable price point. So that's kind of what I would like to do too. I most of all, I mean, I just want to inspire. I want to inspire other people. I want to inspire people to follow their own passions, to be, creative with their talents and show the world their talents and not be led by fear of being seen or being judged and just put themselves out there. So, yeah, I have bigger things in mind and we'll see what happens. I'm working on manifesting those things. So,
Yeah, yeah. Do you mind me talking about, only because, okay, this is something that I struggle with personally,
mhm,
in that I'd love to have the energy, time, whatever it is, to be the professional full-time artist, but I
mhm,
don't have that opportunity because we homeschool kids and we
mm,
do this other stuff. But I have hopes and dreams of being able to achieve that. Yet I see, like we were talking about before, Nelly, maybe like the tragedy of the art world, where I
mm.
see a lot of people losing hope, or they haven't been able to do that. Like, I guess, how are you navigating that, or how do you find that dream or hope?
Yeah, that's hard. I think it's just not comparing, like we said,
Mm,
trying to focus on your own journey. Someone else's journey isn't going to be the same as yours, and you can't look to other people to figure out what your story is going to be. So I don't know. I think it's just trusting yourself, looking inward, and seeing what is it that makes you happy and brings you joy. It can be very discouraging. I try to stay positive as much as I can, but let's be real, like you put something out there and it totally flops, like that's going to make you feel not so motivated to keep going. So, but I think it's important to remember too that it's all ebbs and flows. There's ups and downs, and you have to be okay with celebrating the good times and then learning from the bad times. And it's important to know too that everything does happen for a reason. The failures, the bad times, the things that we see as tragedies shape and mold and make you a better person at the end. If you can learn and grow and you can take something negative and turn it into a positive, then I think you'll be okay. So that's how I see it, or try to anyways.
Yeah, I think you appear to have a very resilient and positive and beautiful way of moving through life, and how you bring your art into that. So yeah, I do. I find that really inspiring, Rachel.
Thank you. It's not always easy. I try to navigate it as best I can. Yeah, the world can be a difficult place. And so I just try and be positive throughout it all.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Rachel. It has been beautiful to have you on, and I've loved chatting and getting to know you a bit more. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm just so thrilled that you wanted to talk to me and take time out of your day. And I appreciate that so much. And it's been so lovely. So thank you. No, other than what we talked about, just hope to motivate and inspire and continue doing what I'm doing and bring more beautiful things into the world that maybe weren't here. So
Yeah,
that's the
before
goal.
creating
Yeah.
something new.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. And yeah, people can find me at RMarie Artistry on Instagram. And then my Etsy shop is rmarieartistry.etsy.com.
Awesome. And I will put the links to those in the show notes for everyone as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on the Trailblazers Palette podcast. We appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe and share if you enjoyed the episode. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with incredible guests. Keep blazing your trail, and until next time, stay inspired. This is Sancha, your host, signing off. See you soon, Trailblazers.